In the next 5 seconds, you are about to see something no one ever expected. Just 5 more seconds, and you will understand why it is truly terrifying. For most of human history, the sky was a place of wonder. A vast, silent expanse that reminded us how small we truly are. But in recent decades, that same sky has become a place of questions. Questions with no clear answers. Questions that governments acknowledge, yet refuse to explain. Across the United States, pilots, radar operators, intelligence officers, and civilians have reported objects in the sky that do not behave like anything we know. They do not follow the laws of aerodynamics. They do not emit visible propulsion. They do not leave heat signatures. They do not respond to conventional interception. And most disturbingly, they appear repeatedly. Not once. Not twice. But again and again. The United States government no longer denies their existence. Instead, it changed the language. They are no longer called UFOs. They are now called UAPs. Unidentified aerial phenomena. A term that sounds technical, neutral, almost harmless. But behind that language lies a much deeper mystery. Because unidentified does not mean imaginary. It means observed, recorded, tracked, and still unexplained. Official reports confirm that UAPs have been detected by multiple sensor systems at the same time. Radar, infrared, visual confirmation. These are not single-point illusions. They are multi-system events. And yet, when asked what they are, the answer is always the same. We don't know. But that answer raises a far more unsettling question. How can the most technologically advanced military on Earth repeatedly observe objects that outperform its best aircraft, and still claim ignorance? To understand why this question matters, we need to step back. Long before UAP became a public term, pilots were already encountering something strange. In the early 2000s, US Navy pilots reported objects that could descend from high altitude to sea level in seconds. Objects that could stop instantly. Objects that could accelerate without visible thrust. One pilot described chasing an object that seemed to anticipate his movements. Another reported seeing something drop from above 80.00 feet to just above the ocean surface almost instantly. No wings. No exhaust. No sound. Just controlled motion. At first, these reports were dismissed internally. Pilots were told they had misidentified drones, weather balloons, sensor errors. But then radar operators began seeing the same objects. At the same time. In the same locations. And suddenly, dismissal was no longer possible. The US Navy quietly upgraded its reporting systems. Not to eliminate the sightings, but to collect them. That alone tells us something important. Governments do not invest resources into tracking things they believe are meaningless. They track threats. They track unknowns. They track what they do not control. As reports increased, so did questions. Why were these objects appearing near military training zones? Why did they seem particularly interested in naval operations? Why did they demonstrate capabilities far beyond known human technology? For years, these questions stayed behind closed doors. Then, slowly, something changed. In 2017, information that had remained classified began to surface. Videos, testimony, documents, not leaks from conspiracy theorists, but confirmations from the Pentagon itself. The US Department of Defense acknowledged that it had studied UAPs through a secret program. Not to prove extraterrestrial life, but to assess threats. That detail is critical. Threat assessment means the objects were taken seriously. It means they were not dismissed as fantasies. It means something was there. Something real enough to justify funding. Real enough to justify classification. And real enough to remain unresolved. The released footage showed objects that rotated, hovered, accelerated, and then vanished. No explanation was offered. Only this statement. These phenomena remain unidentified. That single sentence changed everything. Because it meant the government was no longer denying the mystery. It was admitting it. But admission does not equal transparency. If anything, it raised even more questions. If these objects are foreign technology, then which nation possesses capabilities decades ahead of the United States? If they are secret US projects, why are US pilots encountering them as unknowns? And if they are neither, then what remains? At this point, pause for a moment. Before we go any further, if you find this topic fascinating, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Your support helps us continue exploring questions that are rarely discussed openly. Because what comes next is where the story becomes truly uncomfortable. As investigations continued, analysts noticed patterns. UAPs were not random. They appeared near strategic assets, near aircraft carriers, near missile test ranges, near nuclear facilities. This pattern was not new. Historical records show similar reports dating back decades. In some cases, UAPs were observed hovering near nuclear missile silos. In others, they were reportedly associated with unexplained system malfunctions. These incidents were quietly logged, rarely discussed, almost never explained. Why would unidentified objects show interest in humanity's most destructive technology? Some researchers believe this suggests surveillance. Others believe it suggests deterrence. But official explanations remain vague. Another disturbing detail emerged. Some UAPs were observed not only in the air, but entering and exiting the ocean. These objects did not slow down when transitioning from air to water. They did not create splashes. They did not leave trails. This implies technology capable of operating in multiple environments seamlessly. Air, water, possibly space. No known human technology can do this. At least not publicly. The Pentagon acknowledged these transmedium objects. And still, no explanation followed. So the question becomes unavoidable. Is the US government hiding the truth? Or does it genuinely not understand what it is seeing? Both possibilities are deeply unsettling. If the government knows more than it admits, then the public is being deliberately kept in the dark. But if the government does not know, then humanity may be sharing its airspace with something it cannot control. And that brings us to classification. Why is so much information still restricted? Officials often claim secrecy is necessary to protect national security. But secrecy can also protect embarrassment, or fear, or uncertainty. Governments are not built to say, "We don't know." They are built to project control. Admitting ignorance undermines authority. And admitting the presence of superior technology raises questions no institution wants to answer. Questions like, who is responsible? Who is in control? And what happens if control is lost? As public interest grew, Congress demanded answers. Hearings were held. Officials testified under oath. They confirmed what many suspected. Yes, UAPs are real. Yes, they remain unexplained. Yes, data exists that has not been released. And no, there is no confirmed explanation for their origin. Some witnesses claimed that materials of unknown origin have been recovered. Others spoke of programs operating without proper oversight. These statements were quickly downplayed, clarified, reframed, but never fully denied. This is where the story splits into multiple possibilities. One theory suggests that these objects represent breakthrough human technology. Technology developed in secrecy. If that is true, then secrecy serves a strategic purpose. But it also means the public narrative is intentionally false. Another theory suggests these objects are foreign. But no nation has demonstrated comparable capabilities. And none have claimed responsibility. A third theory suggests something else entirely. Not foreign, not domestic, but non-human. This is the most controversial possibility. And also the one officials are most careful to avoid addressing directly. Notice the language used. Unidentified. Unknown origin. Insufficient data. Never extraterrestrial. Never non-human. Because naming something gives it form. And form demands explanation. At this stage, the truth may not be a single answer. It may be a combination of multiple unknowns. Some objects could be experimental. Some could be misidentified. Some could be something entirely outside current understanding. But even that raises a final, haunting question. If these phenomena have been occurring for decades, why is the public only now being told fragments of the story? And what changed? Why now? Is it because technology has made secrecy harder to maintain? Is it because the volume of encounters has increased? Or is it because something is approaching a point where denial is no longer possible? As you watch the visuals unfold, notice the tone, the silence, the restraint, the absence of definitive answers. This is not accidental. It reflects how the issue is treated at the highest levels. Carefully, cautiously, reluctantly. Because whatever the truth is, it may force humanity to confront something far larger than politics or technology. It may force us to confront our place in the universe. And that is a conversation governments are rarely eager to start. By now, one thing should be clear. Whatever these objects are, they are not being treated as jokes. They are not being ignored. And they are not being explained. Behind closed doors, the tone is very different from what the public hears. When officials speak privately, they do not ask whether UAPs exist. They ask what they represent. Threat, technology, intelligence, or something else entirely. Former intelligence officers have described a culture of compartmentalization so strict that even those inside the system rarely see the full picture. Information is split. Data is isolated. Access is limited. Not because the truth is simple, but because it is fragmented. One department studies radar data. Another studies materials. Another reviews pilot encounters. No single group sees everything. And that may not be accidental. Because when knowledge is fragmented, accountability disappears. And when accountability disappears, secrecy becomes easy to maintain. This is where whistleblowers enter the story. Over the years, individuals from within military and intelligence circles have come forward with claims that go far beyond official statements. Some have said that materials of unknown origin were recovered decades ago. Others have claimed that specialized programs exist outside normal oversight. Programs that do not answer to Congress in any meaningful way. These claims are controversial, often dismissed, sometimes ridiculed, but they are rarely directly refuted. Instead, officials use careful language. We have no evidence to confirm these claims. We cannot verify these allegations. These matters remain classified. Notice what is missing. They do not say it is impossible. They do not say it never happened. They say they cannot confirm. And in intelligence language, that distinction matters. Because confirmation depends on access. And access is the one thing the public never has. As congressional hearings continued, lawmakers began asking more pointed questions. Do we have data that has not been released? Yes. Do we have sensor recordings that remain classified? Yes. Do we have encounters that cannot be explained with current technology? Yes. So the next question becomes unavoidable. If the government truly does not know what UAPs are, why is so much information still hidden? Officials argue that releasing more data could reveal capabilities, radar ranges, sensor sensitivity, operational procedures. And that explanation makes sense. To a point. But not all data is technical. Not all evidence compromises security. And yet, even basic contextual information remains limited. This suggests that secrecy is not only about protecting methods. It may be about protecting conclusions. Or the lack of them. One of the most troubling aspects of the UAP issue is consistency. Across decades. Across locations. Across witnesses. The descriptions remain strikingly similar. Objects that accelerate without inertia, change direction instantly, hover silently, disappear abruptly. These are not new reports. They appear in declassified documents from the Cold War. They appear in pilot logs. They appear in radar archives. And now, they appear in modern sensor systems that are far more sophisticated than anything from the past. If these phenomena were misunderstandings, we would expect patterns to change as technology improves. But they do not. They remain just as elusive. Which suggests one of two things. Either our understanding is fundamentally flawed, or the phenomena are adapting. That idea is deeply unsettling, because it implies intent. And intent implies intelligence. But intelligence does not automatically mean hostile. It means purposeful. And that raises an even more uncomfortable possibility. What if these objects are not threats, but observers? What if they are not reacting to us, but monitoring us? Consider where UAPs appear most frequently. Military installations, training exercises, nuclear facilities, naval operations. These are not random locations. They represent power, destruction, capability. If an unknown intelligence were studying humanity, these would be logical points of interest. Not cities, not landmarks, but systems that define our ability to wage war. This idea has been quietly discussed within defense circles. Never publicly endorsed, never officially denied, but always lingering in the background. Another disturbing detail is duration. If these phenomena are new, secrecy could be justified as caution. But if they have been occurring for decades, then secrecy begins to look like avoidance. Avoidance of panic. Avoidance of accountability. Avoidance of a conversation that has no easy answers. Governments are institutions built on control. They manage borders, resources, Information. The idea that something exists beyond their control challenges their very foundation. So what happens when control is uncertain? You delay. You classify. You minimize. You release information slowly, carefully, in fragments. This is exactly what we are seeing now. Incremental disclosure. Not because the truth is simple, but because it is destabilizing. As public awareness grows, officials walk a careful line. They admit enough to maintain credibility, but not enough to provoke deeper questions. Yet those questions continue to surface. What happens if full disclosure occurs? Would society collapse? History suggests otherwise. Humanity has absorbed paradigm-shifting discoveries before. The Earth is not the center of the universe. Time is relative. Reality is probabilistic. Each revelation was disruptive, but not destructive. So why is this different? Perhaps because this discovery is not abstract. It is not distant. It is present. It suggests we are not alone in our airspace. Not alone in our environment. Not alone in our domain. And that realization carries consequences no government can easily manage. It changes how we define security, sovereignty, power. If another intelligence operates freely within our skies and seas, then borders are meaningless, weapons are limited, and authority is questioned. This is why the UAP issue remains unresolved. Not because evidence is lacking, but because implications are overwhelming. At this point, we need to ask a different question. Not, what are UAPs? But, why are we being told so little? The answer may lie in uncertainty rather than deception. It is possible the government truly does not know. That the data contradicts itself. That conclusions remain elusive. Admitting that would mean admitting vulnerability. And vulnerability is not something nations like to display. But it is also possible that the truth is known and judged too destabilizing to release. Not because it is dangerous, but because it forces a fundamental shift in how humanity understands itself. Now is a good moment to pause. If you've made it this far, you're clearly invested in this question. So take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. What do you think is really happening? Is this secrecy protecting us? Or protecting a narrative? Because the future of this mystery is approaching fast. More sensors. More satellites. More civilian recordings. Secrecy becomes harder every year. At some point, denial becomes impossible. And when that moment arrives, the question will not be whether the government hid the truth. The question will be why. Why did they wait? Why did they hesitate? Why did they choose silence? And perhaps the most unsettling possibility of all is this. What if the government is not hiding the truth, but slowly preparing us for it? Gradual acknowledgement. Careful language. Controlled release. Not because they want to deceive, but because they are afraid. Afraid of panic. Afraid of loss of trust. Afraid of admitting that humanity may not be at the top of the hierarchy it assumed. If that is the case, then UAP disclosure is not a revelation. It is a process. One that unfolds over years, decades, until the truth becomes undeniable. Until the sky itself forces the conversation. And when that happens, the mystery will no longer belong to governments. It will belong to everyone. Because some questions cannot remain classified forever. And some truths do not wait for permission to be revealed.